And this
Yeah.
is my cannabis-addled homeboy,
Yeah.
Zen Burro.
Mm-hmm.
Coincidentally, in my experience, uh, depending on where you live, I'm not necessarily advocating you try to find some, but like generally, if you sit and think on a sativa, like Taoist thinking is a lot easier to understand.
Uh, yeah, it can be.
Wait, it can? It's not a necessary thing?
A necessary thing? It can be.
So
We're on
what are we doing today? Oh yeah, we're picking up with chapter 63 of the Tao Te Ching.
yeah.
Um the more I think about how these streams have traditionally gone for us, like I don't know if we're gonna finish it today because isn't there like 80?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I don't think that's gonna happen. So there's probably gonna be another one next weekend, but we should get through like at least 10 of these.
There's like 81.
Oh, 81?
Yeah,
Oh, I can't count. Well, we'll see what happens.
you're right.
If people come in and start asking questions or we get off on tangents, like all good. I'm not really too concerned, and we have our names like in
Yep.
the corners now, so I don't have to keep the annoying title up all the time. Um, he is the Zenist of Burros. I am the philosophical vagabond, and the ruler of Gimpia.
Yeah.
Fellow Gimps, we will rule the world one day.
Mhm.
Um, so let us get this Tao Te Ching text up here for y'all, so y'all can see what the hell we're talking about. Boom, and then I gotta spotlight you. There we go. Yeah. So we just finished 63, right?
Right.
Yeah, I think that's where we left off. I'll go first, I guess. Peace is easily maintained. Trouble is easily overcome before it starts. The brittle is easily shattered, and the small is easily scattered. Deal with it before it happens. Set things in order before there is confusion. A tree as great as a man's embrace springs from a small shoot. Talking about them bamboos. Uh,
Hmm.
a terrace 9 stories high begins with a pile of earth. A journey of 1,000 miles starts under one's feet. Another version of that is a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. Um, he who acts defeats his own purpose. He who grasps loses. The sage does not act, and so is not defeated. He does not grasp, and therefore does not lose. Um, People usually fail when they're on the verge of success. Man, I feel like this is going to be interesting. Uh,
Hmm.
so give as much care to the end as to the beginning. Then there will be no failure. Therefore, the sage seeks freedom from desire and does not collect precious things. He learns not to hold on to ideas. He brings men back to what they've lost. Um, he help the 10,000 things find their own nature, but refrains from action. Man, um, you have anything you want to say about that one? I thought it was pretty interesting.
Yeah, it is pretty fascinating.
Hmm. Do you have any pensamientos?
People usually fail when they're on the verge of success, I think is pretty nice.
Oh, so yeah, before we do that, we have a. So, like, how does this relate to COVID-19 and how did COVID-19 affect us? Like,
Oh, like this?
yeah.
Um, a lot of it for me is like acceptance of the situation as it is, just figuring out what to do next. Um, what about you?
Um, Very much the same. Like, for me, like, Taoism sort of helps with the notion that we're not in control of nearly anything that happens to us, right? Like,
Yeah.
these are just circumstances that are occurring, and we're not like willing them into existence, but we do have to deal with them. And like, how do I put this? So, understanding that I don't control anything that happens with regards to COVID-19
Yep.
is really, really helpful in maintaining a level head, because now it's very easy for me to understand that like I have nothing to do with any of this, and the only thing I can do is wear a mask in public, try to maintain proper social distancing, wash my hands, don't be around people that I think are sick. Uh,
Right.
I also read a lot of stuff on ProMed Mail and try to keep track of outbreaks of COVID-19 and stuff.
Yeah, it's just being aware,
Yeah,
following those safe practices.
exactly. And this helps a lot for that. Like, it's weird because it's a very, like, people condemn Taoism as, like, this really passive philosophy. In a lot of ways, it comes off that way, but it's really not.
No.
It just doesn't think of action in the same way that we often do.
Exactly.
Okay, so you were saying people often fail when they're on the verge of success, right?
Right. So give as much care to the end as the beginning. I think that's pretty apt for anything that you do.
I have to agree with you.
Yeah.
Let me flip back over because there was a line in that same one that I was thinking about also that I kind of wanted. Do 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 do. He who acts defeats his own purpose. He who grasps loses. The sage does not act, so is not defeated. He does not grasp, and therefore he doesn't lose. Right?
Right.
Do you have any thoughts on those 4 lines by any chance?
I have to think about it a little more.
I could start us off.
Yeah.
So in Stoicism, they like this whole metaphor of the archer thing,
Mm-hmm.
right? And the same thing is present in like Kyudo, the art of like Zen archery,
Yeah.
where you do everything that you can to prepare yourself physically for the shot,
Yeah.
but once you let go of the arrow, you have nothing to do with it.
Yeah.
So, like, in a way, that's what I feel like. The sage doesn't act and therefore is not defeated. He doesn't grasp, therefore he doesn't lose, right?
Yeah.
So, like, he's not sitting there trying to will the arrow toward the target. He's already let go of it, and he's like, whatever's going to happen as a result of that action is what's going to happen. This sounds really simplistic, but you'd be surprised how many people don't do that. So, let's say somebody's going in for a job interview, and they're typically like super nervous people.
Yeah.
They don't know how to prepare. They're not very experienced in interviewing for a job. So they go in and they interview for 3 of the same kinds of job. The job doesn't matter. Where it is doesn't matter. And they tank it because they never prepared,
Yeah.
right? And then they go to a friend and they're like, I need help preparing for a job interview because, like, I want to work at this place doing web development. And they're like, oh, what happened when you interviewed at your last 3 web developer positions? Well, we're giving things a name now because I understand web development. And they were like, well, I just started rambling about projects that I did, and like I didn't really like speak to anything in the job description. And then when I looked back at the job description, I realized that it was weird because I actually know how to do all this.
Yeah.
And so the friend takes a look at the job description and is like, okay, well, I've seen you code most of this stuff by hand. You're doing WordPress theming. You're theming for both Drupal, Joomla, and all that sort of thing. And you've built your own stuff using like Ruby on Rails, and it's all data-driven goodness. So like all of this is in this job description. So why didn't you talk about any of this?
Yeah.
And the dude was so nervous that it didn't even occur to him, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this is what happens to people. So then, like, what they try to do is, like, after the interview, because they were so nervous during it, they like, incessantly bother the person they interviewed with. Like, they're trying to control the outcome, right?
Right.
So what this is advocating is that you put all your ducks in a row, as we say in the U.S., right? And then you just let it go.
Right.
You do the best you can to prepare, you give the best interview possible, and then you leave it. And yeah, there's things like courtesy calls and checking up on the status of the position, whether it's been filled. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about the person who incessantly calls. Don't do that, man. It's not necessary.
Yeah.
In fact, sometimes, depending on how your interview went, doing that will make you less likely to be hired.
Mm-hmm.
So, to the contrary, Taoism isn't saying, oh, the sage doesn't do anything, so then, like, he never loses. It's not like, oh, I can't fail because I don't try. That's not the logic here.
Yeah.
The logic is do the best you can to prepare and then leave the result to whatever happens.
Yeah.
Because you can't change the result of anything.
No.
Like, even in academia, right? Like, if you take a test, you can't change your test grade on the same exam. You might have a teacher that allows you to retake an exam.
Right.
But you can't change the performance you gave on that specific instance of the test. But that's what we try to do in life, and I think Taoism is trying to tell us not to do that.
Right.
And, like, back to my weird resume example, he helps the 10,000 things find their own nature, but he refrains from action. That's the friend pointing out, like, all the ways in which you satisfy every requirement in that job description.
Yeah.
And then pointing out that, like, maybe you didn't put any of this stuff on your resume and you should have.
Mm-hmm.
But he's not taking the action for you.
Yeah.
He's just pointing it out so that he can help you, like, use your own resources to better prepare for your next interviews. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah. What do you think?
Yeah, I'd say that's pretty good.
Oh, well, thanks. This one.
Yeah. Alright. In the beginning, those who knew the Tao did not try to enlighten others, but kept it hidden. Why is it so hard to rule? Because people are so clever. Rulers who try to use cleverness cheat the country. Those who rule without cleverness are a blessing of the land. These are the two alternatives. Understanding these is primal virtue. Primal virtue is deep and far. It leads all things back toward the great oneness.
Do you have any thoughts on this one, dude?
This one's, I think, is pretty explanatory about cleverness, what we talked about before.
Yeah, we've kind of done cleverness into the ground, haven't we?
Yeah.
Just to let you guys know, like, I keep reminding people, but it tends to get lost, right? So if you're on Facebook, that doesn't go to the Restream chat whatsoever. So if you ask a question there, like, I literally can't see it. So if you're on Facebook and we're friends, send me a message on Messenger or tag me in something so my web browser's like, dude, you have a thing. it helps. Because I've gone back to the video after the fact and realized there were like people commenting. And like I forget to say that every like 5 minutes because
Yeah.
I can't type today. Man, like every time I read this, I start thinking about like all the artificial divisions in society and like the idea of like the primal Tao or whatever.
Yeah, primal virtue.
Yeah. And yeah. Why is the sea king of 100 streams? Because it lies below them. Therefore, it is the king of 100 streams. Oh, yeah. The sage, if the sage would guide people, he must serve with humility. If he would lead them, he must follow behind. In this way, when the sage rules, the people do not feel oppressed. This is actually one of my favorite chapters. When he stands before them, they will not be harmed. The whole world will support him and not tire of him, because he does not compete. He does not meet competition. What do you have any thoughts on this one?
I was thinking about leadership and how to relate to people. Because so many people want to control things, so. And that's when people under them just start talking and spreading gossip and all that.
Yep.
Yeah, like listening to people and listening to them and what they're actually thinking and all that, I found is that happens less often.
That's a pretty good way of thinking about it. So by contrast, what do you think effective leadership looks like?
Someone who listens to his other teammates and tries to consider all the options, but like at the heart of it, like he or she cares about like the integrity of the team, not just whether he or she gains something.
Right. Okay, I see.
They're all working towards a goal, but there's the self-interest they're all aligned because he talks to them, knows about them as people. They don't have to necessarily be friends, and some might even disagree with them.
Yeah. So they might not even like you.
Yeah, that too.
If you're a leader. Because I spent so much time tutoring, it kind of reminds me of like teaching someone something, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I still kind of am, but I definitely was when I started a very impatient kind of person. Like extremely impatient. Like if things didn't come as easily to my student as they did to me, I usually found a way to just get through it as quickly as possible and move on.
Mm-hmm.
So that usually entailed me giving a lot of the material away, right? And what I found over the years is that when you, quote, teach that way, no one learns.
Mm-hmm.
And then they become dependent on you giving them the answer.
Yeah.
So, like, not only do they not learn the material, but they're not learning how to think, right?
Right.
So often, like, I will talk about a topic, like present the material they're having trouble with, because obviously, like, that's why they're there, right? They've done the homework, they're in school, and, like, they're still not getting it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's why people get tutors. That's why people have questions. That's why, like, teachers have room for Q&A in classes.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, but so, like, I'll present the material in a different way. Like, often what happens when you're a tutor is you're not given classroom materials.
Yeah.
So, like, you have to wait until you meet with the student. Then you need time to look over what they're studying. And then you're like, okay, I think I have some idea. And, like, that's actually really difficult because it requires you to know things in a way that most teachers don't know them.
Yeah.
Like, you have to be able to do this stuff off the cuff.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'll do that, like, be like, okay, so here's what I saw in your book, right? And if they have like a worksheet, I'll look over the worksheet and be like, are there any questions that are really important? I'll ask them those questions to figure out where they're stuck. And then I'll represent the material, and then I'll start asking them other questions.
Yeah.
That will lead them to the answers to the questions they need to answer.
Mm-hmm.
And then by the time they finish it, they're like, dude, well, that was kind of easy. Like, why didn't my teacher just do that? And like the short answer is like either A, they don't have time, or B, they honestly don't know how.
Right.
Because it takes a special person to be able to dissect materials into further questions that aren't idiot questions. Like, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
And so, like, this is the kind of thing I think it's talking about, being able to, like, lead people to their own answers rather than giving them yours.
Yeah.
67. Everyone under heaven says that my Tao is great beyond compare. Because it is great, it seems different. If it were not different, it would have vanished long ago. I have 3 treasures I hold and keep. The first is mercy, the second is economy, and the third is daring not to be ahead of others, which goes back to what we were saying.
Mm-hmm.
From mercy comes courage. From economy comes generosity. And from humility, which speaks directly to your point, comes leadership. Which, by the way, was a great point.
Yeah.
Nowadays, men shun mercy, but try to be brave. They abandon economy, but try to be generous. They do not believe in humility, but always try to be first. This is certain death. Mercy brings victory in battle and strength in defense. It is the means by which heaven saves and guards. Like, do you have any thing about this one?
I kind of like nowadays mention mercy, but try to be brave. You know, the abandoned economy, but try to be generous.
Yeah.
I think that says something about one's self-integrity. Like, we have these ideas of, you know, how to be a good person and all that. Like, we have that idea, but do we actually practice it? Like if you were in a job, like, you know, I worked in a grocery store, so I tried to live up to all my duties and that image. So, but in myself, like, I didn't really feel that, nor did I want to, because it was just a job.
Right.
Yeah, and I had moments where the two aligned, like being a worker in a grocery store who knew a lot about products and, you know, delivered that customer service. There were days like that where they just both aligned. Part of it could have been like my mood at the time, or I was just reading a lot and trying to apply different philosophies.
Interesting.
Yeah.
You mean philosophy can change the way you think?
I thought I could.
Has that been your experience that the more you engage with that, like
um, like
then
philosophy or the application?
both?
Yeah. Um, now with the Taoism and Stoicism, it's just like closer to just being more routine than because at the time it was just the novelty of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I should mention to people that might not know what my bias is when it comes to philosophy. If you want to talk about academic philosophy, we can do that, but chances are I'm going to shut you down because I don't care.
Hmm.
And my heavy bias is toward the practical application of philosophical thought. So I will, when it comes to like Western modern philosophy, I'm more inclined to want to talk about existentialism
Yeah.
versus like Berkeley's theory of the mind of God, right?
Hmm.
Because I don't care.
Yeah.
Likewise, I don't care about Descartes' cogito ergo sum. Like, I don't give a damn about the implications of thinking like that.
Yeah.
Because, like, it was just something he was engaged in heavily as a thought experiment to determine, like, what a person is at its essence.
Yeah.
And other than that, other than that conclusion and having read it and stepped through the arguments and like imagine myself doing it, I don't care after that.
Hmm.
Um, so like, just be warned if you're trying to talk about philosophy, that's going to be my bias.
Yeah.
And if you can't practically apply something, then I personally will find most of your arguments specious.
Hmm. Let's see, 68.
Is it your turn?
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's see. A good soldier is not violent. A good fighter is not angry. A good winner is not vengeful. A good employer is humble. This is known as the virtue of not striving. This is known as ability to deal with people. This, since ancient times, has been known as the ultimate unity of heaven.
I wish more people read this book,
Yeah.
even just one time, carefully. Because, like, how many bosses have you had that are really all that humble?
Not many. Some think they are.
But, like, when they're like, oh, I'm usually a humble person, or like whatever people say,
Yeah.
right? Like, in my experience, that's usually an indicator they're not.
Yep.
Um, you know, I'm sure you've had that.
Yeah, the ability to deal with people, that's very important. And not getting violent or angry or contemptuous.
You know, like, when I was a kid, like, and I would get picked on, right?
Hmm.
So then I would end up fighting.
Yeah.
And, like, it got to the point where I would like to fight.
Hmm.
And, like, when I look at a line, like, a good soldier is not violent.
Yeah.
A good fighter is not angry. A good winner is not vengeful, right?
Yeah.
When I look at those three lines, I'm like, that's what I was.
Hmm.
I was violent, I was angry, and I was vengeful.
Yeah.
Because I wanted, like, to me, it was all about conquering the person so that they would never do that shit to me again.
Hmm.
And, like, eventually it did stop because some people, dudes, don't, like, they need to figure out that they can't just do whatever they want to you. But most of the time, like 90% of the time, there are nonviolent ways to um, de-escalate a conflict and like avoid conflict entirely. Avoid violence for sure, but like
Right.
conflict in general, I don't think is something you can ever entirely avoid, which is why, like, this is just my personal feeling. When people are like, I don't like conflict, my first question is, what do you think of life?
Yeah.
Because life is conflict. I mean, there's more to life than conflict, but a lot of these things that we find joyful, right,
Right.
born of fiction, like not fiction, friction.
Yeah.
Friction. They're born of like things clashing and rubbing up against each other in like weird ways and then recombining into something different.
Yeah.
Right? Like all of my experiences with conflict have actually made me a less violent, less angry person than
Mhm.
I was. So I guess what I want to say is like conflict isn't something to be avoided, right?
Right.
Like it's an inevitable consequence of being a human being that's alive.
Right.
And the best thing you can do for yourself and for those around you is learn how to deal with it in a way that is naturally suited to your personality and disposition. And like if people don't respect the way that, provided it's not complete avoidance all
Right.
the time, right? Because there are some conversations that I'll avoid having. There are situations that I'll outright avoid, but then there are things that I know need to be dealt with, and I typically like to deal with those as directly as possible.
Mhm.
Anything you want to add?
No, I'd say that was pretty good.
Um, there is a saying among soldiers: I dare not make the first move, but would rather play the guest. I do not advance an inch, but would rather withdraw a foot. This is called marching without appearing to move, rolling up your sleeves without showing your arm, capturing the enemy without attacking, being armed without weapons. Yeah, this is confusing to me.
Mhm.
There is no greater catastrophe than underestimating the energy or enemy. Um, by underestimating the enemy, I almost lost what I value. Therefore, when a battle is joined, the underdog will win. Um, this actually reminds me a lot of Sun Tzu.
Yeah, same.
Uh, so, like, you know, people we've mentioned this before, but I think people underestimate the value of yielding.
Yeah.
Um, so they're not talking about like just letting things happen, right? Like tactical withdrawals can lure people into weird traps,
Yeah.
right? Like, let's say, um, let's say you're in a wheelchair and you have a friend that is always like bagging on the way you do things.
Mhm.
Um, and I've had this happen on a few occasions. And so instead of being angry, I'm like, because I've tried talking to the person about it, and like sometimes that doesn't work.
Right.
And so like sometimes what I've done is like had them use a wheelchair for a certain amount of time. And what I find is like by them having that experience, they become less angry at me because they understand that having to deal with the wheelchair all the time inherently takes more time than they're used to.
Yeah.
And like certain things are more difficult. Like you can't reach your top cabinets in a seated position even when you're of average or greater height.
Mhm.
And they're like, oh, no wonder why you ask for help, or it's really hard to lift this thing with one arm without spilling it. I'm like, well, yeah, dude.
Yeah.
But like, they don't think about that. Like, a lot of people don't think about stuff from another person's experience unless they can simulate it, right?
Right.
And I don't know about you. Maybe, like, do you feel like people have lost the ability to, like, mentally simulate a situation and like produce cognitive empathy from that?
I think on a day-to-day level, yeah. And by day-to-day, I mean like when people go to a store or anything, and having a conversation with someone who's a vendor, basically, of whatever product you can think of. Like we're distracted by anxieties. We have certain ideas in our head that we want to do during the day, so we're not actually all there when we're speaking to someone else. So it's like the capacity to simulate those situations in your head, especially when you're going to spend money. I feel it's not even used, but I think people are capable of it, given if they're prompted to. I should add.
Interesting. So, do you think there's a way of prompting people?
Sometimes I find asking a lot of questions that are relevant to them helps, because then they'll start actually thinking about what they're thinking instead of being like so goal oriented. If that makes sense. Like someone in a grocery store wants something specific and they just don't. They're just not budging. And they don't really care about how you feel in that moment either. It's usually after the fact that they start thinking about stuff like that, like reflecting on the day. But people most often, I found, really don't try to consider what they did yesterday and try to better themselves the next day. I don't know, it's weird to say.
Yeah, and like the Stoics, right? Well, specifically Seneca that I'm aware, had this habit of like being like, okay, did I live up to my virtues today? Did I do that well? Right?
Yeah,
And then like at the end of the day, and then he'd be like, okay, what did I do well? What could I have done better? And like, what didn't I do at all? Maybe.
right.
Like, what was I just not aware of until I sat down right now to write this thing?
Yeah,
And I think the more people engage in that type of self reflection, because extroverts can do that shit too. They can't mentally introspect very well. Like, I'm weird because supposedly I'm an ENTP, but like, I'm good at introspection. I don't know.
yeah,
But like, the more people engage in some kind of self reflection, whether it's, talking to a best friend
mm-hmm.
about something going on in your life, or like something you repeatedly struggle with, or whether it's in a journal, or whether you record yourself and listen to it later.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
yep,
Like that matters, because then it makes you more able to like do this thing in the moment. Like the more you practice it alone,
yeah,
intentionally, like not just when you feel like it, the more you practice it alone, the more easily you're going to be able to do that in the moment, like when it matters. So like the more you're self-reflective on how irritable you are, for example, if you're an irritable person,
yeah,
and let's say you find yourself at a grocery store and you're annoyed because like there's a dude in a wheelchair with a grabby thing trying to get a can on the top shelf. Like
yeah,
you'd be like, wait, is this just the same irritability I wrote about 2 days ago? Like I
mm-hmm.
just go do something else and come back.
Right,
If that's the best I can do, that's what I should do. If I can stand there and wait without making a scene or doing the damn it, like that sort of thing,
yeah,
then I'll do that. But if I can't, I'll just go get something else and come back in like 5 minutes. And having those contingency plans makes a difference. Ashley said, I got bullied pretty bad when I was in school. Officials didn't care even after I complained. They're dead to me. I'm like, that's why I fought.
yeah,
Because like I would, do the quote grown up nonviolent confrontation thing and nothing would happen. Like sometimes it would just make the whole situation worse. Like this one dude like punched me in the stomach Karate Kid style. Like when we were coming back from recess one day, I told the teacher, the dude said he was sorry and then he did it again. So then I punched him in the face next time. Like hard. And then like he tried to grab me and then I just like kind of like, sprained his wrist and then like punched him again. And then after that we were friends.
Yeah.
I don't really understand that, but we were friends. Like he actually would fight other people who were trying to fight me. Or like if you saw him trying to do something, he would be the first one to be on him. I don't understand it, but that's what happened.
Yeah.
It's really weird. The dude's name was Scott. I don't remember his last name. Well, I do, but I don't want to say it. But it was weird, man. And like it taught me something that I don't fully understand, but sometimes like I feel like with certain kinds of people, they just need to know that they can't do something to you like that without something else happening to them.
Yeah.
And like once they figure that out and like once they actually try talking to you like a person after that, they're kind of cool sometimes. Is this you or me?
I think it's me.
Okay.
Yeah, certainly.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. My words are easy to understand and easy to perform, yet no man under heaven knows them or practices them. My words have ancient beginnings, my actions are disciplined. Because men do not understand, they have no knowledge of me. Those that know me are few, those that abuse me are honored. Therefore the sage wears rough clothing and holds the jewel in his heart.
Do you have anything you would like to say about that one?
Not sure. Something about, people can read this and perform it like it said, but what does it really mean to them? I think is what he's getting at.
I mean, yeah. I think I would have to agree.
Yeah.
My computer is behaving very strangely right now, so if something happens, my bad.
Is there anything you want to say?
Let me take a second look at you. My word. This kind of feels like, if the Tao were speaking to humanity.
Yeah.
This sounds very stoic right here. Therefore, the sage wears rough clothing and holds a jewel in his heart.
Yeah.
Right? Those that abuse me are honored. Those who know me are few. We have a backward way of, like, looking at our relationship to other things, right?
Right.
Like, on the one hand, the crappy thing is that we view ourselves as separate. And that in part is because of our, like, cognitive experience of life.
Right.
Like, we have the ability, like, right now, like, I see things as though I'm playing an FPS. But then I also have the ability to kind of pull back and look at my own thoughts as if they happen to somebody else.
Yeah.
So that in and of itself gives us this feeling of this weird separateness. And, like, it's weird because, like, the Tao is basically saying here, those who know me are few and those who abuse me are honored, right?
Yeah.
Like, we kind of hold industrialization as though it's, like, the pinnacle of human work. Right? I mean, we started industrializing when people started building pyramids.
Yeah.
And then what we labeled the Industrial Revolution was the automation of a lot of the same stuff. And like, it's led us to this point where we're no longer caring for our world. We just look at it as a thing to use.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
So, and I think that's really backwards. So, like, yeah, you're right. Like, people who think about this stuff and people who, like, put it into practice are two very different kinds of people.
Right.
Because, like, I've met lots of intelligent people in philosophy classes that don't necessarily understand how to apply anything.
Yeah.
I mean, and they're cool people to hang out with. There's nothing, like, wrong with them. It's just, they're just fascinated by the series of ideas, and they don't really care about whether or not it's applicable to anything in their lives.
Right.
Man, knowing ignorance is strength. Ignoring knowledge is sickness. If one is sick, then one is not sick. Wait, if one
Sick of sickness.
thank you. If one is sick of sickness, then one is not sick. The sage is not sick because he's sick of sickness. Therefore, he's not sick. I mean, like, this very much goes back to like self-reflection, right?
Right.
Like, if you know you're ignorant about something, like, okay, so in modern pop psychology, like the whole idea of the fixed mindset versus the growth mindset has become very popular. I know a couple of life coaches personally
Mm-hmm.
who talk about this on a regular basis. And that is what this is pointing toward. So, like, let's say, I don't really want to get political, but it's the best example I can think of. Let's say that you know someone who's very anti-immigration, like closed borders.
Yeah.
You try to present this person with data. One of two things happens. Either A, the person is like, nope, that's my opinion, that's all I'm gonna think,
Mm-hmm.
and you can't change my mind. Right?
Right.
That's my definition of stupid. And that's the second one. Ignoring knowledge is ignorance. Or ignoring knowledge is sickness, rather. Sorry. And then the other way that person could respond is like, well, damn, I heard somebody at work talking about this the other day. I think they might have immigrated from another country.
Yeah.
I should go talk to them and see what this is about. And maybe through that conversation, maybe the friend like they start talking. They're like, "Well, I never really thought about this problem before. Do you have anything like I can look at?"
Mm-hmm.
Right? Then that's when ignorance becomes strength, because you're like, ignorance isn't a bad thing, dudes. It just means you don't know something.
Yeah.
But if you don't know something and you refuse to learn anything about it, that's sick to me.
Yeah.
Because that's not being a person. That's just like reducing yourself down to the simplest version of an ideology you possibly can. And if you're doing that to yourself, stop.
Right.
It's not going to get you anywhere. Not in the long term. It'll lose you a lot of things that you hold very precious in your life. And like the sage, right, is somebody who embodies the growth mindset. Like if they see a fault in themselves, then they work on it. they learn from the people they lead. To go back to like one of the other earlier things we read, they watch people. They learn from the people that supposedly look up to them,
Right.
which is what keeps them humble. And that is what makes resilient people the most resilient, is that they look at life as an opportunity to learn about themselves and to learn about others, instead of just seeing things as being against them, let's say.
Right.
Um,
Right.
so it's your turn, right?
Yeah, 72.
Yeah.
When men lack a sense of awe, there will be disaster. Do not intrude in their homes. Do not harass them at work. If you do not interfere, they will not weary of you. Therefore the sage knows himself, but makes no show, has self-respect, but is not arrogant. He lets go of that and chooses this.
You got anything you want to say about that one? I have a feeling you might.
I think it's pretty transparent what it's saying.
But is it though? Like to the average person, is it going to be that clear?
Yeah. When men lack a sense of awe. Yeah, I feel like as a species we've kind of lost that. And I think part of it is like all the knowledge that we have now about the physical world.
Yeah.
And we drown ourselves in information. So there's a weird sense of apathy.
As Kreia says in KOTOR 2, apathy is death.
Yeah.
If the word awe doesn't work for some of you watching out there, what about the word curiosity?
Yeah, that would be a better word.
Because curiosity often leads to some kind of action, right? Like we go learn something.
Mm-hmm.
Because I don't think I've experienced awe, you've experienced awe, but I think people in our world often associate awe with a positive feeling.
Yeah.
But sometimes it's utterly frightening. Right? Like awe doesn't have to be like this overwhelming positive feeling.
Mm-hmm.
It just means that you're struck by like something about whatever it is.
Yeah.
And it's a strong feeling. And like that's equally awe as like, wow, that's super pretty, and you just stare at it for like an hour. Both of those things are awe.
Yeah.
Hence where we get the words awesome,
yep,
and awful in our modern usages. But both of them are like, denote experiences of awe. And you're right, I think we have lost it. How do we feel more awe?
That's tough.
Yeah. I don't know. Do you want to just try to finish this?
I don't know. What about you?
I can if you're down. I don't.
Because I was thinking about stopping soon.
When do you want to stop?
Maybe after this one.
You want to go eat and read Sandman, huh?
Somewhat.
Oh, he's looking for private time, ladies and gentlemen. 73. Yeah, we could. Is 74 short? I don't know. Yeah, we can stop after this one. It's good.
The rest look kind of hefty.
All right. Yeah, we'll stop after this one, dudes. It's good. 73. A brave and passionate man will kill or be killed. A brave and calm man will always preserve life. Of these two, which is good and which is harmful? Some things are not favored by heaven. Who knows why? Even the sage is unsure of this. The Tao of heaven does not strive, and yet it overcomes. It does not speak, and yet is answered. It does not ask, yet is supplied with all it needs, or all its needs. It seems to have no aim, yet its purpose is fulfilled. Heaven's net is cast wide. Though its meshes are coarse, nothing slips through. You have anything you want to say about it, Moha?
I like that. Some things are not favored by heaven. Who knows why? Even the sage is unsure of this.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of think about judgments we make about external things.
And like, because they're connected, I was thinking, a brave and passionate man will kill or be killed. A brave and calm man will always preserve life.
Yeah.
To which is good and which is harmful. And then that goes directly into what you were saying. So I think, what can we say about those lines? Because I think those are that's a really good set of points.
Like, I don't know, kind of having preconceived notions of good and bad.
That too. Yeah,
If we try to, figure out what is good and bad and try to apply them so rigorously or rigidly, that's when we feel unsure about certain choices we make. Because we never really had to think about, like, is it good for me in this way? Like, is it good for me to quit a job if, like, I find one that pays better? But then I've developed these relationships with people and I don't necessarily need higher pay at this moment in my life. Or like, or if you see something that's morally reprehensible to you, but you choose to still work there or something like that. Either because we've been there for a while, the pay's good, or you've just known people there for a while.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like,
so kind of like figuring out that discernment in yourself.
Ooh, you're using a Catholicism term. It's one of the 7 gifts of the Holy Easter Bunny. Yeah. Didn't you know it's one of the 7 gifts of the Holy Easter Bunny?
Yeah. Yeah, I just forgot.
They actually stole literally all of that from the ancient Greeks.
Yeah.
Including the definitions.
Mm-hmm.
But it's cool because it works, and that's why I brought it up. Because you make a good point, dude. Like, a lot of people that I have known personally, and I think that you've known, will quit a job and get another job just because that other job pays more.
Yeah.
And then, like, they'll be unhappy.
Mm-hmm.
And they can't figure out why.
Yeah.
And then when you start talking to them, maybe they say they feel lonely.
Mm-hmm.
They don't really have friends at this new job.
Yeah.
And, like, they work longer hours.
Mm-hmm.
And they're not making as much money as they thought they would.
Right.
I think that when it comes to, like, decision making, it's important to, like, weigh all the factors in your decision. Like, obviously, like, if you're ridiculously poor and you desperately need money, nobody's going to fault you for that.
Right.
Like, if you barely have enough money to feed yourself or whoever you're taking care of, like, nobody's going to fault you for taking a job that pays more money because it pays more money.
Right.
But, like, a lot of people like you were saying, like a lot of people will take a job that pays more, even though they don't need more money.
Yeah.
Like, and I've seen this even with people who make enough to pay their rent or mortgage and all their bills, and they still have money to put away.
Mm-hmm.
And they'll still take a job that pays more money. And I'm like, you don't really need it.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh yeah, but if I had more money, I would buy like this and this and this. And I'm like, yeah, but I understand that you want this shit, but do you need it?
Yeah, and that's where desire comes in.
And like, I don't do like, I talk about this a lot with people, but I think like not growing up with a lot of money was a really valuable experience for me.
Mm-hmm.
Because I know when I want something, I know when I need something, and I know when I'm trying to convert mentally a want into a need.
Yeah.
So that I can justify getting it.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
And like if that's what you're doing, that's cool. Like I'm not saying it's necessarily bad. Like if you can afford it, dude, and you're not like harming yourself in the long term by doing that, by all means just do it. But
Right.
just admit that it's something you want.
Mm-hmm.
Don't like try to convince yourself like if I had a better computer, I would start my own like business.
Yeah.
Because I'd be able to do like these 8 things. Like if you haven't been able to guess, I've told myself that before.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you know, because we live together, but like,
Yeah.
Yeah, but you don't need to do that. Like, if you just want a better computer because you want to play games, and like you can afford to play games, do it.
Right.
Who cares? Like, if you're not harming yourself by going after that, then you're not hurting anyone. There's nothing wrong with like just wanting something because you want it.
Yeah.
That's my point. Like, desires aren't necessarily bad. It's just you, at some point, you have to figure out that you don't need to fulfill every desire that you have. And sometimes it's just okay to let them sit there. And other times it's okay to be like, well, yeah, I can afford a new computer. And like, it would make my experience doing this and this a lot better. Because,
Right.
like, obviously we're streaming, right? Like, so having a better computer is helpful. I do eventually want to start a new business, but like that's not the reason I bought this. The reason I originally bought it is because like I was hoping for a new computer, something happened, and like I just wanted to like have a better one.
Yeah.
And I told you that like I just wanted to have a better one to replace the one that I would have had.
Yeah.
And you were like, "Well, dude, then yeah, just you have enough money, so just do it." There's nothing wrong with that. But like, don't convince yourself that you need something because like when you do that, you start blurring the line between want and need, and then like it's very easy to like live outside your means, right? So like when I was an escort, I did the math and I was like making like $90,000 a year tax free.
Mm-hmm.
I did that for like 3 years as a weekend job, and I was making that much tax free, right? So I bought hella stuff
Mm-hmm.
that I convinced myself I needed.
Yeah.
And then when I was no longer making that money because like I couldn't stand to look myself in the mirror anymore, like because of other reasons.
Yeah.
I got really depressed because now I no longer had the same level of freedom. Like if I were smarter and I like took the time to consider, I was in my 20s, so I was an idiot, right? Like I was a smart idiot, but I was an idiot. So like what I should have done was taken like most of that money and put it in savings.
Mm-hmm.
What I did instead was try to fill a hole that I had in myself that I didn't recognize with stuff. So now it's gone. That's what happens when you convince yourself that the things you desire are things that you actually need.
Yeah.
So make sure you're very clear on what you value in life and focus on those values. Focus on like making those values. And this is what the Stoics would say, right? Like they have the 4 cardinal virtues. We're going to talk about Stoicism in the future. Like we have one more of these streams to go, and we're still deciding what to do next. But we're going to talk about Stoicism some point soon.
Yep.
And what the Stoics would say is like the four cardinal virtues are the only things that matter. Um, Modern Stoicism takes a slightly different approach, asks that you go through values clarification, and most people actually like agree to a large extent with the four cardinal virtues.
Yeah.
They just word them in their own way, and it points to something specific in their life. But if you look at the root of it, it's basically the same for most people. And they would say that like do things that enhance those values and cultivate them within yourself.
Yeah.
And like the rest of the things like money, health, and status can help you cultivate those values to an extent, but those in and of themselves are not what you're really after. And when you change that frame of reference, it becomes very clear what you want and what you need. Like if you want to stay alive, and life is preferable to death because it gives you opportunity to explore life, cultivate virtue, and like define your values and live according to them. Right? This
Yeah.
is what Stoics would argue. Life is preferable, so therefore you should eat food
Hmm.
because you can't cultivate any more virtue in death.
Yeah.
Right? So it's not like an either or thing. Like it's not the indifferent things themselves that are good or bad. It's what we do with them. But we'll get into that in the future. Um, any random ass thoughts you have? I like your random ass thoughts.
Um. Yeah, I'm not sure. I just basically agreed with everything you just said.
Um, well, is there anything you want to add to it then? Or you want to tell a side story? Like, I don't care, dude. It's all. Because I know you have personal stories around all of this stuff. Like,
Yeah.
unleash your inner Socrates.
Yeah, I don't really have much to add to that. Because the thoughts that I have are actually really private and something I would talk to you in private.
Oh,
Yeah.
well, in that case, um, you got any generic version of that you want to share, or you just want to talk about that shit later?
Um,
Either answer's
I
fine.
don't know, like, it's always an interesting question to ask about loneliness and philosophy.
Yeah.
Yeah, because applying it and trying to always, because I'm coming more and more as I grow older that we need each other, like all of us. And I'm not just saying some kumbaya stuff, like we're dependent on each other.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's what this philosophy is all about.
Which
It's
is why
just it's very difficult to like experience that when you have a bunch of other floating thoughts that distract your mind.
I
So like
agree.
yeah, like we want to believe we're independent, but we're really not.
We are interdependent beings.
Yeah, and well, it just kind of sucks that sometimes when you want to build new relationships and all that, or transform a relationship, sometimes it's very difficult because the other side needs to do that too. And the thing is, you can't really enforce or control it either, nor can you make it go faster, like, the process go by quicker.
Exactly. Oh shit, you're talking about my life right now.
Yeah. But yeah, so that's basically this philosophy.
Yeah, I mean, so one thing I want to say to people based on what you've said, because now I see why like the full version of that is like I feel like slightly nakedified.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. So we'll talk about that off stream because I
Yeah.
want to hear what you have to say. But what I want to say to people, dude, is like this idea that you literally do everything alone
Hmm.
is the most destructive idea we have in our Western culture.
Yeah.
Because okay, look, I'm not negating people's hard work
Hmm.
ever, but you need, and I'm gonna be like hella forceful with this shit. You fucking need to understand that nothing anyone has ever done has been alone.
Yeah.
Like, whether you crawled out of an abusive situation, whether you built a business from the ground up, whether you went from being like scrawny or like physically like undesirable to yourself to,
Mm.
to becoming something that you appreciate in any way, shape, or form, whether it's physically, emotionally, spiritually, whatever, it happens because of your experience. And your
Yeah.
experience does not happen in isolation. So even in the worst cases, I hate to put it this way, but there are still things to be thankful for to other people. If you're a business owner, it's because of your clientele that you exist.
Yeah.
If you're Elon Musk, you forget that
Yep.
because you're at the top of your game, and I get that. But he owes his success to the people who bought into what he was doing, and we are no different.
Yeah.
So nothing we do happens in isolation. Nothing is completely us. It's always us plus whatever made up our circumstance, the things that we worked against and with. And that in itself is what interdependence means.
Yeah.
And the sooner you let go of that, I did it all alone mentality, like, honestly, dude, like, that mentality, because I used to think that way.
Hmm.
You remember, man.
Yeah.
The sooner you let go of that mentality, the fuller your life becomes.
Hmm.
Ashley's like, I agree with that. Yeah, I thought you would.
Yeah.
I thought you would. And I'm glad you do. Because while I don't like enjoy looking back at certain aspects of my life, because there was a lot of like bids for control, there was some abuse going on, and like all this stuff.
Hmm.
And I'm not saying that like that stuff is okay, right?
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is it made me what I am now. And that didn't happen just because of me. Because if it was just because of me, I would have been born that way.
Right.
I would have been born with this knowledge that I have now. I would have been born with this psychological makeup to become like the person streaming now. But that's not how I was born. And so, in a way, like I'm thankful for those dark experiences. I'm thankful for the fact that I've lived through suicidality. I'm thankful for the fact that I've struggled with various addictions
Yeah.
and like psychological trauma. Because if I didn't, nothing I would say would mean nothing I say to you right now would mean anything to me.
Yeah.
And that's not the reality that I'm living in. The stuff that I am saying has meaning to me. The stuff that you're saying has meaning to you.
Hmm.
And it's because we've been through things. Like everybody goes through shit.
Yeah.
And so looking back, I found a way to be thankful for those experiences. And
Yeah. Same.
that fucking saved us. So with that, guys, I will be solo streaming a disability stream on Tuesday, another one of them.
Yeah.
I have some questions from viewers. Some of them are not explicitly disability related, some are. There are some clips from a movie I would like to share with you. I'm probably going to get copyright strikes for that, but I think like the sharing is more important than, you know, anything that could happen to any of my social media accounts. So I will probably be doing that at like 12:30 Tuesday. What's Tuesday's date?
I think it's the 28th.
So yeah, Tuesday the 28th at 12:30 p.m. Come join me. If you know me on Facebook, ask your questions on Facebook. I will be very happy to answer them. If you follow me on Twitter, ask there. On Instagram, or just come by and chat with me on YouTube or whatever, and it'll be a good time. If you, I don't know what the hell your work schedule is, but if you happen to like want to pop on as I'm still streaming, because I might be talking a lot, cool.
Yeah. All right.
We can talk about autism or something.
Yeah.
We can talk about the story of going from like confused kid to like autism diagnosis to like where you are now, if you want, because I think that's really interesting.
Yeah.
And I think, but if you don't want to, that's fine too. I'm not like making you. But like, if you're available, cool. If not, cool. With that being said, dudes, thank you, whoever joined us, for joining us.
Yep.
We'll see you guys. This feels like it's fairly weekly, so we'll probably see you guys next week.
Yeah.
It'll probably be a weekend thing, which is totally fine with me. I actually like the fact that it's on a weekend, so we'll see you guys next time. And I'll see you guys Tuesday.
See you then.
All right, dudes.